Obviously, that last day was an emotional roller coaster. It was, I've experienced very few things like that in my life, but I think once that game was over, and okay, it's kind of like closing the casket. In some ways, and I hate to use it. I don't use that lightly, but it has been such a part of my life and so many people.
Clay, I have to begin like this. So many people say that I have a good name for broadcasting, right? Like Brody Brazil. I didn't choose it. I didn't know I was going to be a broadcaster. How many people tell you that you just have the perfect name for being a groundskeeper? Clay Wood.
A lot. Yeah, it's been mentioned a lot over the years. Two mediums, Clay, working with Clay the way we do in groundskeeping, it has been kind of it is a perfect fit for sure.
It was, 30 years working at the Coliseum for the Oakland A's? Do I have that correct?
Yes. So I started in September of 1994. I moved up from Arizona. The season they were on strike at that time. My boss was leaving Mark Rasm to go to Colorado to take on construction at Coors Field while they were playing actually at Mile High Stadium. So when he left for the Rockies, that's when I was hired from. I was in Arizona as the A's Arizona head groundskeeper, and then was hired as the Oakland A's head groundskeeper here in Oakland that September of '94.
There's not a lot of those jobs to go around, obviously. So when you get that Oakland A's job working at the Coliseum, for somebody in your profession, that's like the dream job, right?
It is a dream job, and it has been for 30 years. What a job to get to come to this stadium every day and be around Major League Baseball and be around the Oakland A's and truly a dream job.
I know you're at your office right now at the Coliseum. You're finishing out the rest of this month. Has all of this sunk in? And we're a couple weeks now removed from the last game, and we're all trying to figure out life. Myself, yourself. Where are you kind of at in maybe the transitional period and the acceptance or the understanding? There's just a lot going on for people that have done jobs for a long time, and now this is going to be different. How are you doing?
Yeah, it is different, and I think in a lot of ways that last week, that last game, there was closure in some ways. It's almost like a death in the family, and then you go through the 7 stages, and then I thought I was doing. Obviously, we found out in July and was doing really well with everything until that last day to get in the car to go to work. And it was like, okay, then it sinks in. And obviously that last day was an emotional roller coaster. It was, I've experienced very few things like that in my life, but I think once that game was over and okay, it's kind of like closing the casket, in some ways. And I hate to use it, I don't use that lightly, but it has been such a part of my life and so many people, like I said, there's so many people that are in the same shoes. So it's going to be different. It's going to be change. I'm excited about the future. I don't know what that holds at this point in any way, shape, or form, but I do know that I'm grateful for everything we've had here. And I met my wife here, and my kids grew up here. Like we talked about earlier, I've had a dream job for 30 years. And I think there's, people that would just, they wouldn't even, probably wouldn't even understand what that means to say, I've truly had a dream job for 30 years. And what that, everything that has entailed is just, I'm very grateful for that.
I'm with you, and I understand it as much as anybody. Same thing, met my wife at work, became a father. Bip and Shooty and I were doing an A's Royals game one night, got the phone call, oh, see you guys, got to go to the hospital. All those things, and I think that's why it is a connection. And I don't think you're wrong for saying it's like it was like a funeral and like a death. This was the Oakland A's aren't actually a living, breathing thing, but they are such a huge part of our lives that, this is a big change. I appreciate you for giving me some dirt, which I have. I haven't figured out how to ultimately display it, so it's still in that original container, but I'm going to do something nice. I'm wondering, and you haven't spent your last day there yet, but I'm wondering, are you going to take something? What might that be that you want to keep?
I've got a few small things. I did get some bases. I'm going to make some bar stools from those bases to have for, future, something that I could take wherever I go. Hopefully, someday have a house with the man cave that I want.
feel like we got to talk to your wife about that first, but okay.
Exactly. It's got to be something where it can be my own room. But no, I'm not taking. I do have some dirt in a sealed container that was authenticated, but not a lot. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, we talked about everything's tied for me to the Oakland A's, to this place. It's, other than I guess the 5 years I spent initially in Arizona with the A's. I started after my freshman year of college, but really, for me, taking away the things from here, the friendships, I think that will last a lifetime are probably the most important. And those things will never change. So, but yeah, just there's not a lot, I want to take from here, but everything, like I said, just everything with the A's for me is tied here right now. So it's, and that's why I think in some ways that, that last game was kind of that closure that I needed personally from that. Like, okay, baseball for me here is, that's done. It's time to move on. And at least from this place with baseball. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's part of life too.
Taking dirt seemed like the common, popular thing to do. And I saw Chris Bassett do it after his last, literally half inning out up there on the mound. Mark Canha, I had talked to Mark about what he was going to do before he played there with the Giants last game. Same thing, put some in his back pocket. And when you saw staff on your own grounds crew shoveling dirt to fans in that last game, I mean, that to me is one of the most captivating images that has nothing to do with the actual game, but that image just says so much. When would you ever see that in baseball or in sports? Somebody, a grounds crew person giving dirt to fans, but the significance of that, so tremendous. What did you think when you saw all that happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Who would ever thought dirt from the Coliseum playing surface would be so, so popular.
It's coveted. It is so. People were asking me hey, can I have some of your dirt that you got? I'm like, well, hang on a second. Let me get my dirt first.
Right. And I think, I think in a lot of ways it makes sense because it's something that's easy. If somebody had a water bottle or somebody had a cup or something,
right, it's
a little piece of that. It's a little piece of the A's in this place that they could take with them. That's very simple.
Yeah.
So, and what it does too is it kind of shows you how many people have, the feelings that so many people have towards this place, and not just the A's, but the Coliseum itself.
My son saw the dirt in the canister and he goes, "Daddy, why is there dirt over there?" And I said, "I will explain to you more. Don't touch it first. And second, I will explain to you what that is maybe when you're a little bit older and why I'm keeping it, And I honestly, I was even thinking about doing something here in my home studio, keeping it somewhere where it's just always on display. It is, I know that sounds crazy, but you believe this. That's important to me. That dirt is important to me to keep that. So
yeah, and I think it's going to be. I think a lot of people are going to take that dirt and do something special with it.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just really, in some ways it's insignificant, but it's very significant to them, and a piece of the ground, a piece of this place that relating to the A's and relating to baseball at the Coliseum. That they can carry forward.
You haven't done your last day of work there yet, right? You're still working through the end of this month. Is it going to be easy? I mean, I walked out of NBC recently for the last time, ever, or now. Are you dreading maybe the last day of work, or has the last game already been like the last day? How are you doing with that?
Yeah, I think probably that's going to be easier than, the last game.
Yes.
I think in a ways I've had a lot of time for closure. I've had a lot of time to, to think about it. And like I said, when the A's, when Mason Miller got that last out, for me, that was that was kind of the closure on it. Like, okay, this part of it's done here. Hopefully the Coliseum will be carried on for use for other things. I know in a lot of ways it's probably beyond its useful life, but it's still a great field, and it's still, a gathering place for the community at this point. So, hopefully that tradition carries on. But I think the hardest parts for me are over when it comes to that, just because everything, like I said, for me here was tied to Oakland A's baseball. And obviously that's, they're moving on and to the future. And that's kind of just that closure, I think.
The field, I suppose, is a living entity, right? Like the grass is alive, the dirt's not. But did you treat that field almost like a human, like a person, like a family member? I mean, you put so much time and effort, and I know sometimes like you'd bring in the monster trucks, or when the Raiders played there, it was a different beast. But was that field, and I say I'm using this in past tense already, which by the way bugs me, was it like a family member to you?
It was. It is still like a family member, and you're right. It's a living, breathing thing. Major league fields, not just Oakland, they go through a lot of abuse. They have concerts, they have other sporting events, and through all these different challenges and events, including baseball. Major League Baseball schedule is very rigorous, and you go from night games to day games. So getting a field proper watering, even just during regular baseball season, can be very tricky. So you do have to treat it almost like a human, and you have to feed it. You have to know it almost like you would one of your children. Okay. They're hungry now, it needs food. So in a lot of ways, it is a family member. It's a baby. It's, you have to nurture it. I mean, it's really, and I think from our standpoint as groundskeepers, I think that's one thing that I think always is important to get out there is, number one, it takes a crew. Mm-hmm. It's not just me. I've had the opportunity and been fortunate to have unbelievable people work with me throughout the years, great grounds crews. And so not only does it take a crew, but it takes a tremendous amount of hours that is never seen by anybody but people who are around it. You've seen it a little bit.
Yeah.
People in the stadium see it. We're usually the first ones to get here. Every once in a while, there might be somebody, maintenance workers, somebody doing something when we get here. And we're pretty close to the last ones to leave, besides the clubhouse guys who are doing laundry. So, I mean, for a baseball game, it is an all-day affair. And what goes into maintaining these fields at the highest level that we possibly can, these pristine conditions,
yeah.
It takes a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of alluded to it, and I've always known that it's a lot of work. How do you quantify, like, the exact number? Like, how many hours per week? And I don't know if you can even, like, some are probably more than others, but, like, how much time and commitment are we talking here? Because I think when you say it's going to blow people's mind.
Well, let's say for an average night game, a 6:40 start time, which we used to start at 7, so right. Even that 20 minutes has made a big difference. But we would start at 9 a.m. or earlier.
Wow.
At 8 a.m. for a night game. And then we would go all the way through the game. And then we would be here for post-game prep or fix-up after the game, which was usually about an hour to an hour and a half after a game. So if a 6:40 game gets over at 9:30, we're looking at 10:30, 11 o'clock by the time we're out of here after a night game. So, 13, 14 hours a day is not uncommon. And there is some downtime during the day. And part of the reason why we're here so early is the players are getting here earlier than they ever have. There's a lot of early work that takes place, whether it's ground balls or hitting. So we have to have all our preparation, all our mowing, everything done by the time those players start showing. They're showing up as early as noon these days.
Yeah.
Some guys doing individual things, doing their running or pitchers doing their drills or whatever. But we basically have to be set and ready to go at 1:00 for a visiting team to take the field for early work if they choose to do so that day.
You got to be ready by the time the very first person shows up and is ready for that playing surface. Back in the day when I first started covering the A's and I was working for Channel 36 and, I got to know, okay, that's Clay Wood. And somebody told me, okay, stay away from Clay when the Raiders season comes back. So I imagine when they eventually departed, and nobody likes seeing teams leave, like we can all establish that, but that was a real challenge when it was a baseball and a football stadium. How much more difficult did that make your life and your job when you had to do both in the late baseball, early football season?
It was extreme. I mean, just to be honest, and that statement is probably pretty accurate. I mean, it was a mentally stressful time of year.
Right.
It was a physically stressful time of year. Starting in, usually it was even starting in July, even thinking about the preparation for football for the conversion season. We had to start doing some things different in July to prepare for early August preseason stuff. That was torture, and that was torture for a lot of people. I'm not selfish in this for myself or my crew. It took an army to convert this stadium of people, from stagehands and crane operators and steel workers dealing with the bleachers and maintenance employees cleaning up, instantly after an A's game to convert to Raiders and vice versa. So, I mean, that was a struggle for a tremendous amount of people. And when the Raiders did eventually leave, there was some back and forth, and they ended up staying for that 2019 season. But it was honestly, it was a lifestyle change. It was almost like a mini retirement in some ways. First of all, the Raiders left, and then we had our dirt shows in 2019, and then we went right into field construction, and then the pandemic hit and there was no baseball. And all of a sudden we went from working every day, and then we had to split up our crews, and we had certain guys working Monday, Wednesday, Friday, certain guys working Tuesday, Thursday. Everybody was rightfully so, very cautious, but it just, you went from being here every day, and then all of a sudden there's no baseball till July, and it was just this huge gap. It was like, wow. I mean, things just settled down so quickly, and just such an unusual time with that. But once the Raiders left, and it really did make it was a huge lifestyle change for myself, for my crew, for my family, for everybody involved, I think.
The Coliseum playing surface, correct me if I'm close here or far off, 20-something feet below sea level?
22 feet below sea level.
Did that help or hurt, being a perfectionist like you are about keeping the field nice? The water table, I guess. Maybe you're close to it. What am I trying to put together here? Well, there are factors,
and I think when you think back to Raiders football, you think back, John Madden was a guy who was I don't know how, I don't want to say obsessed, but he was in some ways obsessed with that, and I heard stories in the old days when they first started playing football and baseball here, and they had new sod there were stories of sod floating away in the end zones, and Al Locasell, who was with the Raiders for a long time. And when the Raiders moved back in 95, I spent a lot of time with Al, and the stories that he told me about the surface, and everybody used to accuse Al Davis of watering down the field to slow down the other team, and Al Locasell said, why would we water the field? We were built on speed. We had the fastest receivers in the game.
Right.
We would never water down the field intentionally, because all we're doing is slowing ourselves down. So there are definitely quirks in this stadium. One of those being that the field's 22 feet below sea level. I've gotten to the point over 30 years where I can almost walk across the field and tell you whether it's low tide or high tide.
Wow.
Not that means that water's necessarily intruding into the field, but it just feels different, depending on whether that, the San Francisco Bay, if the tide's in, it's softer. You get a different you get a different reaction with the dew and just how wet things stay versus when it's low tide. So it's quirky and, in a lot of ways ingenious what they did back in the early 60s, designing and building the stadium. And at the same time, it's, you look back on it now and you would think to yourself, wow, I'd never do that again. Never do that again.
I would have to think that over the years, baseball players were maybe more particular about how the field was than football players. And if you agree with that, how much conversation did you ever have with baseball managers or coaches or players or personnel about? Because I don't hardly ever recall seeing a bad hop. So like, what would players ever talk to you about other than maybe saying thank you? Well,
there has been a lot of thank yous over the years to myself and the crew, which is great. I mean, that's not why we do it. I'm not good at patting myself on the back. I don't do it for recognition.
That's what I'm here for.
But when guys acknowledge it, it does make you feel good, especially the gold glovers, the platinum glovers like Nolan Arenado and Matt Chapman and Eric Chavez and back in the day, JT Snow and the guys who, I think really appreciate what we as groundskeepers do. When they acknowledge it, it makes you feel good. Baseball is way more particular than football. In a lot of ways, it was much more difficult to go back to baseball because we had to make sure the infield dirt was as close to perfect as it could be, as close to as consistent as it was before they went on the road and we played a football game. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that was the day before they came back. So that's definitely difficult. And we've had some guys over the years that like their positions on the infield dirt a particular way, maybe more water or softer or harder or looser with the dirt. So there are little things that you can control that you can help out. And I always encourage that dialogue with players. Talk to me if there's something you want. If you need a change or you need something different, let me know. And,
awesome.
And as long as it's within our control, then we're happy to work with players. That's our sole reason to be here, is to have that field the best it can possibly be for those athletes.
So of the 30 years you were around, am I accurate to say maybe 10 bad hops, 10 hops that weren't true? Because or do you remember any one particular occasion where you were like, what the heck was that?
Usually when you see a crazy hop, there's something, there's an outside factor from, Now, that being said, you could have a day game where the field, if you play a long day game, fields dry out.
Right.
It's not just here. They'll tend to get a little choppier from the cleat marks and stuff. So you may see a ball do something a little out of character. But usually when you see a hop, it's either, you have a round ball, a round bat, and then you have a flat field, you have grass, you have dirt. There's so many variables for something to go wrong. So, really it's amazing that it doesn't more. But I think over the years where I can make from the field itself, I can over 30 years, and I've watched, I'm going to say 99% of the ground balls that have ever been hit on this field. I could probably recall on one hand how many bad hops because of the field there were.
That's saying something.
And there's and that being said, there's even still variables. It could be cleat marks or, but usually, if a ball hits the mound or the ball has spin off the bat, it can create, just a funky hop that, a broadcaster or somebody might say, "Oh, it took a bad hop," but really, when you look at it, you're thinking, and I'm thinking in my mind as a groundskeeper, how could it take any other sort of hop with that spin on it or whatever?
Should sunflower seeds be banned from baseball fields?
I know a group of about 30 people that would think so, for sure. They're what's funny about sunflower seeds is, when I first started, David Sunflower Seeds, I think was might have been an MLB sponsor, but all the buckets and everything was Davidson. And they were these little tiny sunflower seeds. And by the time you cracked them and got the nut out of there, it was like a little tiny shell. But now they have these huge, gigantic sunflower seeds that, you can see them from the stands.
Yeah, right. No,
so we spend a good portion of our day picking up sunflower seeds, some by hand. We have vacuums and stuff to make it easier sometimes, but it's part of the game. So it is what it is there.
It's got to be a burden. So many people wanted me to ask you about REBA, and I don't even know what the question is and maybe how you came across REBA or what the idea was to bring a dog out to the ball field. I mean, she was like so iconic around the Coliseum Field. So what can you tell us about REBA, how she came to be, and the life that she's had out there? I can't even imagine one being better. And she was almost like a therapy dog for A's players and even opposing players.
And I think that's kind of where, that's what REBA evolved into is kind of a therapy dog, especially for me, having her here every day. It's amazing. And I had a dog prior to REBA named Cassie, a yellow lab as well. And she used to come to the park with me too, but they're just completely different. While she was an amazing dog, REBA is, above and beyond. This dog she's so mellow. She's so friendly, and, players and coaches, they're away from their families, they're away from their dogs, they're away from, so to have that presence of a dog here, it's soothing for a lot of people. And Reba's just the perfect dog for it. Because of her demeanor, which, we initially got Reba as a working dog for duck hunting and she still does that, but when she's here and when she's at home, she's totally different. She is the calmest, mellowest, most loving animal, I think, on the face of the earth.
She seemed so composed too. And even when she was younger, and I know you mentioned she was like trained specifically, but we at our house have a lot of experience with the yellow lab puppy, and we know what they do and know what they do to grass and all the bad things. She just never seemed crazy that, even from the start.
She's always been mellow. Her demeanor has always been amazing. And like I said, I as much training as a dog can go through for whatever you want to train him for, you can't train demeanor. And we see it even with some of the bomb dogs that come through here. You have the mellow ones and you have the ones that are still, even though they're trained, and most of those have been dogs that have fallen out of some sort of service dog training program, and they're still amazing dogs, but there's something where they don't cut it. So they go into this bomb sniffing program, and they're incredible dogs. And some of them are still just crazy out of control. But like I said, you can't teach that. And she just has it. And she's been a perfect fit here at the Coliseum for sure.
It's always been crazy, the contrast of the Coliseum as a venue and a facility versus the playing surface. It's almost like, and I don't mean to disrespect a Ford Pinto specifically, but like imagine that with the interior of a Lamborghini, like Lamborghini seats, like the Coliseum playing surface. And every player across the league would always say, well, this is one of the best. And if you're out there, you see it, it's meticulous, it's perfect. And I've got the opportunity to see other ones, and they're fine. But there was just always something that was like flawless about that playing surface, which again, the contrast from the stadium to the playing surface was always something. I know this is kind of weird. I've got a couple more things left. People also wanted me to ask you about this. What are some general lawn tips for the average homeowner like myself? Like, if we're really going to have you here as the expert, are there like 2 or 3 basic tips you could give me? My front lawn is literally the size of a tee box, so it's not that hard, but it doesn't always cooperate.
Yeah, well, I think probably one of my biggest tips to homeowners is usually, fertilize more often than you think you need to.
All right.
Usually, a lot of times, by the time a yard starts looking yellow or starts to deteriorate a little bit, it's too late. And then you have this extensive, kind of rebound time. So that's what we're looking for here. Is we're always planning ahead for fertilizing, and we have a schedule laid out, and it may not be to a specific date. There might be something that comes up, some sort of extracurricular event or something that'll throw that off a little bit. But I always try to plan out, and you start, if you know your lawn, if you fertilize, you get to know, okay, well, it's 4 weeks or it's 6 weeks where it starts to go off color a little bit or something. But if you fertilize before it gets there, then you really never have that transition process. And the other thing I would say is probably need to mow more often than we do. A lot of people probably only mow their yard once a week or once every other week or whatever. But
right here,
to really, if you skip a week or you go too long, then the more grass you cut off, the more damage you're doing to the blade, the worse it's going to look. So if you're mowing once a week, maybe mow twice a week. If you're mowing once every other week, maybe mow once a week. And then, the little details. I mean, I think I look at it at my house, my wife probably, she's on me about, I have the roofer's roof and the plumber's bathroom or whatever, however you want to say it. But as much time as we spend here and the detail we put into this field, in which some ways I think separates our field sometimes, like you said, all the major league fields are amazing.
Right.
But the detail that my crew puts into this place and the edging we do and just all the little minor things that we do on a daily basis, I think you can do that at home too. You can edge your sidewalks, keep the grass from overgrowing onto your driveway, things like that. It doesn't seem like much until you do it, and then you see it, and that clean, sharp edge just makes a huge difference.
100%. I bought an edger. One of the first things I did when we re-landscaped, I got the lawn in there. What does your front yard look like? I mean, how do you describe it? I gotta know. I gotta know.
It looks okay.
Okay.
It looks okay. I mean, I gotta be honest. When I guess when our second child was born, my daughter was born.
Put less time into it.
I think I came home from the second homestand of the year or something. This was 17 years ago now, but I came home on a Sunday, I think after a 10-game homestand. And the first thing I did was go to the garage. I got the mower and I got the edger and I got the weed eater. And I went out and I spent probably two hours out there. And I got done. I came in and my wife said, "We're hiring a gardener." She's like, take the kids. We're hiring a gardener. So I haven't actually mowed my yard or maintained my yard on a regular basis. I still mow it every once in a while and I overseed it and I do some things to it that I don't expect our routine maintenance guy to do. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I spend so much time here, all my effort going into growing grass and maintaining grass pretty much stands at the Coliseum at this point. So maybe it'll look better moving forward. And it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look like the Coliseum. We'll just say that.
Could you imagine the pressure of that crew that has to come do your yard and work on your yard, knowing who you are and what your body of work is? Like, oh my gosh, this better be good.
They do it, and they do a great job.
I'm sure,
and they know what I do for a living too, which is it can be a funny interaction, or if I have a special request or something. So, but they do a great job, and like I said, I'm gonna have probably, with a little more time on my hands, I'm probably going to have to get more involved in that.
So that's where I'll take it. Two more things here. And the first being, this just seems like it's a science for you. And I know people will say, well, it's just they're good at what they do and they put a lot of time into it. But working hard is nothing like working smart. And I imagine that you and your crew have everything dialed down to the science of chemicals and fertilizing and the equipment that you use. I mean, this is not... I guess what I'm saying is this is not just a job. This is like a science and a perfection that all of you across Major League Baseball have really dialed in.
It is. And it's again, it goes back to the details.
Yeah.
My mentor, my first boss, he was actually with the A's at the time. He was in Oakland and he would come down to Arizona for spring training. He instilled those details in me. The details make a difference. That's what separates. And I think at the major league level across the board, players who have been around the game, coaches, you could talk to Mark Kotze, you could talk to any player that was playing, 20 years ago that's playing now. The fields have only gotten better over the years. The maintenance, the technology, everything about it has evolved to in some ways it's still very old school. It's there's no silver bullets by any means, but technology has gotten better and allowed us to do our jobs more efficiently. and work smarter, not harder in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it is a science. It's a science, and the dirt's a science of its own versus the grass. I think in baseball, particularly in Major League Baseball, we as groundskeepers are judged on our dirt surfaces as much as we are on the infield grass or outfield grass. Pitchers' mounds that hold up well, infield dirt that gives you true hops. So I think that's just as, a big of a science and importance as the grass is. Obviously, you go into a Major League stadium, the first thing you see is the field. And what sticks out is probably, most Major League stadiums, unless they've just had a concert or something, you walk in, you see these awesome green, beautiful lawns, beautiful fields. But it's a science, and again, it's a love. It's a nurturing, caring thing that all these groundskeepers have a passion for, and they take personally with everything that goes into it.
You've been around so long that Bobby Crosby and Mark Kotze were playing on that field. Now they're coaching and managing on that field. At least they were up until now. And like we said before, so much transition in all of our lives. I'll end it with this. What does life look like for you right now? And maybe what's next for you? Do you have any ideas of what you might do or what you want to do next?
I'm trying to figure all that out, as I'm sure everyone
Me too.
Involved.
Yeah.
So I mean, well, in some way, I think if I was 64 versus 54, these decisions would probably be a lot easier.
Yep.
But at this time, no. I think there's still a lot of things to shake out for me personally. I think there's just a lot of things to shake out in general, and I've had already some offers and opportunities, and I've had some advice from some people who've been in this situation, and it's like, hey, maybe don't jump at the first thing.
Yeah.
You don't know what else is coming down the line, and you don't necessarily, after working as hard and as long as a lot of us have over 30 years and 25 years of football, and it's kind of nice to just take a deep breath and kind of look at, are there some personal ventures I want to pursue? Yes, there are. Can I quit working at this point? No. I have 2 college-age kids. So, there's a lot of factors that obviously are going to dictate how things go. But again, I am super fortunate. All the friends in this industry I've made, the connections, and in some ways they're well-deserved. I've put a ton of effort and time into that and trying to nurture those relationships. But at the same time, very fortunate to have some options and not necessarily have to jump to any one thing right away. So I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, please do.
If we need to come back on, but no, and it's gonna, like I said, I'm excited about the future. I just don't know what that means right now.
I'm right there with you, and I'm glad you're on social media. You're on X, so is Oakland Turf, right? That's you.
Oakland Turf, yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. Everybody follow Clay, and, yeah, we will look forward to – a lot of people have said this to me, and I really appreciate it when they do. I can't wait to see what you do next, and that's what I'll say to you. Obviously, and I wanted to have you on here as one of the first guests of this podcast just because, like, what you and your crew and your team did for so many decades to make that Coliseum a home, I thought that was only fitting to start with you. So, Clay, I really appreciate this, man. We will keep in touch and obviously wish you the best.
Yeah, you too, Brody. I appreciate it. And on the social media thing, I'm extremely new to this. I'm still trying to figure some things out, but I felt like it was a platform for me to show appreciation to my crew and what we've done and kind of showcase that. Just because the amount goes back, the amount of effort, time, and the people I've worked with and that have put their heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into this. I think it's important that they're acknowledged and what they've done and made my life easy in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's great. But like I said, I'm new to it. So, I'm sure people judge, but try to figure it out as you go along.
They love the photos. They love behind the scenes, and they love seeing the things that you see and do. So, again, Clay, I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks, Brody. I appreciate the time.